Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all. Thank you to Paula and Orville, who I haven't met yet, but I will, for helping to put this event together. Thank you to the Paul Band. I wanted to say, and to the organizers, to the crew on the ground here that are working hard to help make this event happen. It's a beautiful community here. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Jessie Cardinal from Kikino Métis Settlement. I'm just waiting for my slides to come up. And Jessie Cardinal Netsiga Sun Kikino Tsinia. Keepers of the Water is an organization that I work with. It's an indigenous organization, and we work to protect water. And so this is what I'll be talking about, the message of hope and healing. And if you could go to the next slide. Just want to introduce who I am and where I come from. So, Wayne Gua Sandra Cardinal Nini Giyaguak. Nota Wione Giyagua Ni Musampan Francis Cardinal Nukampan Alice Cardinal. Nigawiyo ne Giyagwa ni Masampan Harrison Cardinal, Egwa Nukampan Louise Cardinal, and then there's some of my great-grandparents in there, mostly from Saddle Lake Cree Nation and Good Fish, and both my grandmothers were Métis. So next slide, please. So this is a World Peace and Prayer Day, or the World Peace and Prayer event. So I wanted to share who helped me learn how to pray. And so Bill and Shirley Jackson. Bill Jackson's from Good Fish Lake, and he runs a program called Tribal Trails on TV. So I grew up learning how to pray that way too, the Christian way, but it wasn't Catholic, it wasn't nothing like that. And it was out of love. Like I learned to pray for other people with love and kindness. So those were some of the first people that taught me how to pray. And I always acknowledge the women, because oftentimes the men get acknowledged, but the men, if they have their wives, part of who they are is because of the women that they're with. And then my auntie Mona and Cal, that's who, when I started to learn about ceremony, because I grew up to be around it but never knew about it, never understood it. So they were the first people that started to teach me, and they were very loving and very kind people. No shame. If you make a mistake or you don't know something, they didn't teach you out of shame, they taught you out of love. So you were allowed to make mistakes, you were allowed to ask questions. Next slide, please. So this is who they learned from. My Uncle Cal and Auntie Mona learned from Joe P. And so all the teachings that in that sweat lodge come from there. And one of the teachings that Joe had was about the journey that we take. And he said that the longest journey that we take is from our head to our heart. That oftentimes we're operating from here, and it's one of the hardest journeys that we take from here to here. So that's one of the teachings that I learned. Next slide, please. So some more people I want to honor who taught me how to pray. Carl and Florence Quinn. They're from the Saddle Lake Cree Nation. They're actually having a sweat today because it's the solstice. So they're in ceremony, and one of the things I learned from them was they really honor that half of the lodge is the woman. So I really learned in that space to feel comfortable as a woman, that we have a place there, and that we're not subservient to men, we're equal to men. And so it's a really beautiful space. And then my Auntie Sue, So she taught me a lot of the Cree language. She's one of my Nehiawewan teachers, but one of the teachings she taught me when it came about prayer was her dad, Vernon, and my mushum were first cousins, and she said her dad would go pray wherever. If he was driving by, and he was driving by a church, he would go pray in a church. If he knew there was a sweat, he would go pray in a sweat. And I loved that. What I loved about it was it took away shame for praying. You can pray how you want to pray, as long as it's not hurting anyone, because we have so much shame and, well, you need to pray this way or you need to pray that way. So I just wanted to honor her on that. Next slide, please. So in our organization, Keepers of the Water, I've been with that organization since 2010, and it was formed in the Northwest Territories. One of our speakers is here, who will be speaking tomorrow, Francois Paulette, one of the founders. And so the reason why it was formed was because there was a concern about the water. There was concern about the quality of the water was declining, and the water levels were drastically declining. So Kana Hoos, who I want to thank you and say hello, who's been doing work traveling all over the world to bring people together, she mentioned the tar sands. So the tar sands is in northern Alberta. It's about 4 hours away from here. It's one of the biggest industrial projects on the planet. And they are extracting millions of barrels of bitumen a day. And in order to extract 1 barrel of bitumen, they have to use 8 to 10 barrels of fresh water every day. So if you can imagine, they're extracting millions of barrels of fresh water every day from the Athabasca River and the underground water. And so, and these rivers, they all meet. So all the waters in Alberta from Treaty 6, starting in Jasper, they all flow north. So there's the Peace River, the Slave River, the Athabasca River. They all flow north into Francois' territory, and they come into this river, that river there, which is called the Decho River, the fast-flowing or the mighty river. That river is the biggest river in the world. And then that river flows into the Arctic Ocean. But it's also one of the most impacted rivers in the world. So what happens when they extract this bitumen, all these extraction processes, they all use fresh water. But I'm gonna just touch on this Fort McMurray one for a minute. So when they extract all this water, all this bitumen, they use all this water, there's all this toxic waste that's left over. They call it tailings ponds. These are the tailings ponds. And as you can see, they look like, the birds might think they're water on a sunny day, but they're so toxic that if a bird lands on it, it automatically dies. That's how toxic this liquid waste is. There's 19 of them up there, and they call them lakes because they're as big as of what a lake would be. That's how big they are. They can be seen from space. And I just recently learned this. I talk about the tailings ponds all the time. This is the biggest toxic tailings site in the world, 4 hours away from us. The biggest toxic tailings site in the world is 4 hours away. And the Alberta government recently proposed with these companies that they said, because the communities are so concerned about it, they're leaking, people are getting rare cancers. In Fort Chip, they have high rates of cancer, all kinds of issues. And so the people are saying, you guys need to do something about this. What are you gonna do? And they don't have a solution. So what they came up with most recently is they said, we found a way to treat it, and then we're gonna dump all those into the water. So part of what our work with Keepers of the Water does is we worked with the scientists, we took all that information to look at it and understand that it's still highly toxic, and no, just no, it's not gonna happen. They are not gonna dump these toxic tailings into the water. So we've been meeting with the federal environment minister, all these communities, going everywhere and anywhere we can where people will listen, to educate them first that the Alberta government wants to do this and that it's going to completely devastate. We're calling it an international human rights crime because it will affect a lot of people. And so Alberta, a couple more points. Alberta is the largest oil and gas producer in the country of Canada. So what that means is they're also the biggest water user in the country of Canada. They're using massive amounts of fresh water. And what's concerning is Danielle Smith wants to double that. We're already at the height, and she wants to double that. And I'm concerned because Prime Minister Mark Carney, he also wants to try and make Canada this energy superpower. But all they're talking about is extraction, and they're not talking about the impacts to the land. They're not talking about how much fresh water is going to be used, how much toxic waste, how many animals, how many medicines, how many berries. None of that. They're not talking about any of that. And like the Pueblo people, is that where you guys are from? You guys spoke this morning? They were talking about why these wars are happening. And they're happening because of oil. The people in Gaza got bombed because of oil. They want to bomb Iran because of oil. They are using the state of Israel, which only became a state in 1948. They're using this tiny little state, these countries like America and all these other countries, to get to that oil. That's what's happening there, just as they said. And then down south, they're causing all kinds of chaos. So I agree, we need to unite. So what does uniting look like to me? Continuing to have these gatherings, continuing to have people come together. But one thing we are also missing is allies. We need to, as Indigenous people, come together, but the non-Indigenous people, and not only the white people. Let's bring in Palestinians, let's bring in the Jewish people that don't support this. Everyone, we need to unite, be seen in the streets, and I know that's already happening. Next slide, please. So one of the things that the Keepers of the Water is trying to do to also fight this off, because we can't always be angry, we can't always be sad. And so one of the things we do in trying to have hope is we're pursuing looking at what does personhood or rights of nature look like. So we were one of the first organizations or communities to, in Alberta, put forward a statement of concern on behalf of the Athabasca watershed. We're not saying that's the only solution, but it's one solution to recognize that water is alive, water has spirit. And so that's one of the things that we have done. And so it's still going back and forth with the Alberta government. Next slide, please. So this is where I wanted to just give some examples or reminders of powerful times of prayer. How, these times of prayer, in these times of crisis, how prayer was powerful in those times. And so as you guys remember, if you could go back to the previous slide, or was this the first one? Okay, so this is the first one. Yeah, that one. So this one, if you guys know this story, if not, I just want to honor Wolverine, who Canahoos knows, late Wolverine. So this man, he did exactly what everybody should be doing. He went to what's called Crown land, our unceded land. He went to his own territory and he set up for a ceremony. And they were doing a Sundance ceremony there. A white farmer who was very racist, he was not okay with that. He called the cops, he threatened them with violence. The cops came out, they were met with 400, just a group of like 20, 30 people. They sent over 400 paramilitary RCMP to come and remove these people when they were just peacefully on the land. The one thing that really resonated with me with this was there was one day where those police shot thousands of rounds, like 20,000 rounds of ammunition at that small handful of people. 20,000. You guys can Google it. Not one person was hurt, or not one person died, I should say. And to me, that's a testament to the power of prayer. Next slide, please. And then some more examples on the power of prayer. The Meech Lake Accord in the 1980s, when Quebec was trying to separate and completely exclude Indigenous people, Elijah Harper, and just that power of holding that feather, what that does for us, that gives us hope. You know, just those simple acts of prayer, how that gives us hope. And again, Amanda Polcheese, this was out in Moncton, and these were the Mi'kmaq people, and they were opposing fracking. And this one woman, how she stood up with her feather against these militarized RCMP, and that has gone around the world. So those are just examples of how prayer gives hope. Next slide, please. So this is one of the things we've done, Keepers of the Water. I was one of the organizers. Cleo Reese, Ariel Deranger, they were some of the founders of this Tarzan's Healing Walk. So what we did, 4 hours north, one of the biggest industrial projects on the planet, we had a healing walk. You guys will see Francois in there. No, that's the old first slide. But anyway, so we had a walk of prayer. Because sometimes it's like, well, what can I do? What can I do? And so this was one of the things that we did, because we were being labeled as violent, as angry, as all these things, which we are not. And so this is how we came up with the healing walk. So we did 14-kilometer walk right through that tar sands. We had to wear masks because the air is so bad. If you ever go up there, it just hits you in your nose. It hits you in your throat. People live up there. And so we walked through that. And there's places that look like desert, because they turned that land, they took all the trees, they did all their extraction, and it looks like a desert there now. But what we did was we prayed. So we walked 14 kilometers, and we had a walk of prayer. And by the last healing walk, there was hundreds of people from all over the world that came. Next slide. So this is my last slide, because I know that we want to hear as many people as we can today. One of the people that inspired me was Sherry Mitchell. If you guys have not heard of her, she wrote a book called Sacred Instructions, and it's one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And so my quote, inspired by her, I said, "We're living in a time of prophecy. You are all needed to help, and with rights comes responsibility. If we're to have a human right to water, we are also all responsible to help protect it and help take care of it." And we have seen over history the power of prayer, and when used in the right way, we can ensure a healthy future for all. Sherry Mitchell, in her book, she says, "Every living thing has its own creation song, its own language, and its own story. In order to live harmoniously with the rest of creation, we must be willing to listen to respect all of the harmonies that are moving around us. And so there was an elder who taught me that everything has a spirit, down to the smallest firefly, to the moose. You know, everything has a spirit. The water has a spirit. The tree has a spirit. And in the spirit world, all of our spirits are the same size. So we're all the same in the spirit world. And so with that, I just want to close with a prayer that my Auntie Sue, I'm learning, that my Auntie Sue taught me in Cree class. So how ka gisi watsuan kisi mantu kinanas komtena semina kota kisagaw e miyak yasi namuin wase mamtanate sigan mian kiske tamawin mian nehiawewin mian kisi watsuin mian sagitawin mian manatsawin, mian nanaskamawin, sawim nitsawasim nanak, niwa wagomagananak, egwakaki au gotagak, isinyawak, ota askik, wawis angi, ka kitam mats kisitik. Hi. So what it says is, kind Creator, I give you thanks again, another day you give us. Bring down a clear mind, give me knowledge, the Cree language, kindness, love, humility, thankfulness. Bless our children, bless our relatives, and all other people here on earth, especially those that are poor in spirit, food, and health. Hi. Kinanas kompna wow ikse.